in the past, have you ever hooked up with Travis Barker?
That I do not mind you asking.
Okay.
No, I never have. And that really sucks that has gone on, but
Like, be accepting of our relationship so that the kids can feel good.
Stop everything. This is the family tea that reads like a slow burn soap with receipts. Kourtney Kardashian has publicly shaded Kim over swirling rumors that link Kim to Kourtney's husband, Travis Barker, and the moment lands like a mic drop that also smells faintly of strategy. This isn't playground gossip. It's a live ethics test about loyalty, branding, and how modern fame monetizes private friction. I'm unpacking the posts, the denials, the third-party chatter, and what this shade tells us about who controls the family narrative and why you should care. Let's start with the facts that are on record. Rumors have circulated linking Kim Kardashian to Travis Barker for some time, and Kim publicly denied ever hooking up with Travis in a recent on-the-record clarification. That denial is a key factual moment because it directly rebuts the central allegation. Those denials matter because they attempt to correct the public record and to protect reputations. Media coverage has cited Kim's rejection of the rumor, noting that she explicitly stated she never hooked up with Travis and rejected insinuations that she had an affair. But denials do not always erase narratives. The rumor ecology that surrounds celebrity is persistent. Proximity, mutual friends, old anecdotes, and tabloid chatter can bounce a rumor back into circulation even after a formal denial. Some outlets have traced the gossip back through social circles and past reporting. Third-party claims and past gossip threads have periodically reignited the story. For example, other media figures and tabloid columns have resurfaced old allegations or comments that feed public curiosity. Those third-party reports are part of the noise and should be read as alleged claims unless corroborated. So what did Kourtney do? Shade, in celebrity terms, is an art. A small public barb that carries the force of a moral judgment while allowing plausible deniability. Kourtney's shade functions both as personal boundary setting and as a signal to fans that she sees a line being crossed. It telegraphs disapproval without launching a full-blown feud, which in today's media climate is a sophisticated move. Why use shade instead of private confrontation? Because in a media ecosystem where attention is currency, a private call doesn't change public sentiment. A public shade forces the conversation into the open, mobilizes supporters, and places pressure on the person being shaded to respond publicly if they want to manage their reputation. It is small, viral, and effective. Interpretations vary. One reading is protective. Kourtney is defending her marriage and drawing a hard boundary. Another reading is tactical. She is leveraging a public gesture that consolidates fan sympathy and redirects the narrative. The most plausible reading is that it is both, personal emotion channeled into a media-aware move. We should also consider the family's business model. The Kardashians sell intimacy as a product. Their brand is built on a porous membrane between private life and public spectacle. That infrastructure makes shade a commodity, something that produces engagement, headlines, and social currency. Kourtney's jab is personal, but also fits neatly into a system that translates private pain into public attention. There is a gendered double standard at work. Women accused of being involved in romantic entanglements are often judged more harshly than men. When mysterious dating rumors circle, cultures often cast the woman as the disruptor and the man as a movable fixture. That double standard shapes how audiences interpret both the rumor and Kourtney's reaction. In this context, Kourtney shading Kim signals to an audience primed to take sides along gendered lines. It also complicates how we assess accountability. Is Kourtney defending a marital boundary? Or is she performing a cultural script that expects women to police each other's romantic behavior? The answer is uncomfortable. It can be both simultaneously. Let's talk about motivation more concretely. Kourtney's shade protects private boundaries and mobilizes public sympathy. It also pressures Kim to either apologize, clarify further, or let the public narrative settle. For a family whose control of narrative is a business asset, those are high-stakes moves. Kris Jenner's role as the brand manager cannot be ignored. She designs narrative arcs, times product launches, and preserves the family's marketability. If a sibling goes public with a shade, Kris will assess whether to amplify, neutralize, or repurpose the moment. Her calculus includes sponsor relationships, streaming timelines, and long-term brand licensing deals. 3 probable strategies present themselves for Kris: contain the story with a privacy-focused statement, package it into a controlled healing narrative, or quietly constrain exposure by limiting cameras and interviews. Each path signals a different appetite for risk, and the chosen route reveals how the family wants to balance emotion and commerce. Travis Barker occupies a complicated role here: a public figure, a husband to Kourtney, and a long-standing presence in celebrity networks. Any rumor implicating him carries added weight because it touches on marital fidelity and public trust. That is why rumors about him tend to be especially explosive. Third-party allegations and tabloid recirculation have kept these rumors alive in the cultural bloodstream. Yet it's critical to label such reports as alleged claims. That distinction matters ethically and legally. When Kim denies the rumor, that denial becomes part of the factual record and deserves weight until credible evidence to the contrary emerges. The media's appetite for scandal, however, ensures that even unverified claims get traction. Past allegations resurface whenever a new interview or public appearance reminds the public of old narratives, and that persistence is what makes Kourtney's shade have such a performative impact. Now watch the mechanics. Shade becomes content. Social platforms will splice the moment into clips, reaction videos, and memes. Podcast hosts will book analysts to explain who's right in moral terms. Every repackaging amplifies the emotional signal, and the family feels the reverberations not just in social sentiment, but in the negotiating rooms where deals are made. Audience behavior matters. If the public rewards spectacle, the family has little incentive to change. If viewers demand respect for privacy, media incentives slowly adjust. The power is distributed, audiences click, platforms amplify, and the family operationalizes that attention. Kourtney's shade is a lever in that ecosystem. How audiences respond determines whether the lever pulls productively or destructively. Let's map plausible outcomes. Scenario 1, the shade catalyzes private repair. Kourtney's message accomplishes its boundary setting, and the family issues a brief privacy statement. Scenario 2, the family packages the narrative into a healing arc that becomes content for a show or special. Scenario 3, the story escalates into a protracted controversy that rattles sponsors and forces a more serious PR reckoning. My bet is on packaging. The family prefers to control and monetize what it can. Perhaps this shade will shatter the curated facade. If Kourtney's jab is genuinely unsanctioned, it exposes fissures that audiences can see as inauthentic brand control being breached. That could erode trust in the family's carefully managed narratives, which would be bad for long-term brand resonance. Let's unpack the sibling politics more slowly because this is where the story gets interesting beyond the gossip. Kourtney and Kim are not interchangeable actors. They have distinct public personae, commercial interests, and interpersonal histories. Kourtney has cultivated an image tied to family, wellness, and domestic authority, whereas Kim trades heavily on visibility, entrepreneurship, and cultural influence. When a rumor circles that implicates a shared inner circle, the two women's public brands pull in different directions. Kourtney's shade may therefore be as much about defending a particular vision of home and marriage as it is about repudiating betrayal. Publicly admonishing, or even lightly trolling, a sister who represents a different set of values functions as both boundary enforcement and brand differentiation. In the marketplace of celebrity values, these gestures communicate what each sister stands for, and fans instinctively map morality onto those public personas. We should also consider the role of intermediaries, managers, publicists, producers, and mutual friends. These players operate in the background but are crucial to how a shade becomes a story. A manager might counsel restraint to avoid contract fallout, while a struggling influencer could see a viral moment as oxygen for a brand relaunch. Producers might signal whether a moment is filmable and monetizable. The mediation layer between private lives and public narratives is where many decisions get made. If Kourtney's shade was a spur-of-the-moment emotional reaction, one set of consequences follows. If it was mediated through advisors, another follows. Observers rarely get to see that decision architecture, and we infer motive from effect, which is notoriously unreliable. Now let's talk about specific PR tactics the family could deploy. First, the statement, a short, tightly worded family release about prioritizing privacy and family well-being. This functions as a neutralizer, signaling to sponsors and partners that the family is managing the crisis. Second, narrative redirection. Tease a feel-good series of family moments or philanthropic activity that occupies the news cycle. Third, legal signaling. While not actual litigation, a mention of respecting past agreements or the presence of counsel in communications sends a signal to potential agitators. Each tactic has trade-offs between authenticity and control, and Kris is an expert at choosing the optimal mix for the moment. Let's imagine a media day plan if the family chooses to monetize. Step 1. A controlled interview where Kourtney explains boundaries in a way that foregrounds care for children and family values. Step 2. An episode segment that frames reconciliation as a form of growth, with careful editorial selection to avoid litigable content. Step 3. Product placement and social commerce activations timed to the segment. The result is a narrative loop. Friction creates content, content is monetized, and the family converts emotional beats into measurable revenue. That loop is morally fraught, but it's also effective, and discerning audiences must decide whether to participate in it. We also need to parse audience psychology. Cognitive biases make viewers hungry for drama, and confirmation bias pushes people to interpret ambiguous signals in favor of their preferred narrative. If a fan is already predisposed to dislike a particular figure, a shade confirms their priors. Social identity plays a role too. Fandom tribalism turns these interpersonal moments into group identity markers. That is why the same shade produces memes in some circles and genuine concern in others. Understanding these dynamics helps explain why a simple post or a subtle comment can spiral into weeks of coverage. Let's not ignore the legal and reputational calculus for brands that work with the family. Corporations invest in brand safety, and persistent controversy increases perceived risk. When rumors are sticky, companies can be forced into hard decisions about whether to accelerate or pause collaborations. Kris's urgency can therefore be read as preemptive brand defense. Stamp out the rumor or frame it into a more saleable narrative before a sponsor makes a unilateral move. In that sense, shade is a form of risk management disguised as interpersonal drama. Another angle is historical patterning. Look at previous family flashpoints where personal drama became business strategy. Breakups that led to spin-off products, reconciliations that preceded new collaborations, and confessions that doubled as marketing. There is a rhythm, crisis, content, and conversion that repeats. Kourtney's shade fits into that pattern, but whether it triggers a new loop or quietly resolves depends on the family's appetite for risk and their read of public sentiment. We can also examine the cultural symbolism of shade itself. Historically, shade emerged from marginalized performance cultures as a rhetorical form of resistance and wit. In contemporary celebrity use, shade is co-opted as a bite-sized moral adjudication. The Kardashian family's adoption of shade reveals how vernacular cultural practices are absorbed by mainstream media and turned into professional communicative tools. That appropriation is doubly interesting because it highlights both creative lineage and the way mainstream attention economy extracts cultural forms for mass engagement. From a media ethics perspective, journalists covering this should provide context, verify claims, and avoid amplifying unverified allegations that affect real lives. Responsible reporting would foreground the on-the-record denial, clearly label rumors as unverified, and consider the welfare of any children involved. That standard would sacrifice some immediate clicks for higher quality civic discourse, which is what ethical journalism aspires to achieve. Finally, let's circle back to the agency. Kourtney's choice to shade signals agency, a refusal to allow the machine to narrativize her life without resistance. Whether that resistance is sincere or instrumental, it asserts that family members can occupy narrative control. That small claim about agency matters in an industry organized around spectacle. It suggests limits to what the family brand can do with people under its umbrella. The mechanics of attention economics mean that every fragment of conflict can be monetized, and so a simple shade can ripple into campaigns, merchandise, and curated narratives that feed the family's bottom line. When fans smell drama, they mobilize into tribes, and those tribes accelerate the drama's life cycle by creating memes, reaction videos, and opinion threads that producers can later weave into promotional material. From a PR perspective, the calculus is straightforward. Control the message, limit legal exposure, and preserve sponsor relationships. When those three priorities align, the family can weather storms with minimal brand damage. The historical pattern for such family moments is instructive: an initial spark, a wave of social amplification, and then either a quiet private resolution or a repackaged content arc that extracts commercial value. Kourtney's shade, whether spontaneous or calculated, falls into that pattern and forces the family to choose between a quiet reset and a profitable narrative pivot. Both paths have costs and benefits. Critics point out that turning intimate disputes into public products normalizes emotional labor and creates a feedback loop where vulnerability is weaponized as entertainment. That critique has moral weight and practical implications. Observers should watch for subtle signals: which accounts get promoted, which photographs are leaked, and whether any exclusive interviews appear in sympathetic outlets. Those signals reveal whether the moment is being monetized. Finally, consider the children who orbit these stories. Media attention directed at parental conflict can leak into domestic life and create long-term effects that are seldom discussed in the heat of the online moment. Ethical reporting would consider harm before amplifying a rumor. Layered on top of PR calculation is performative authenticity. The family often frames emotional exposures as real, while simultaneously curating what is showable and profitable. That paradox, a marriage of sincerity and theatricality, is baked into how modern celebrity functions, and it explains why audiences are both hooked and exhausted. Kourtney's public posture is a moment where authenticity and strategy collide, and that collision creates the content that powers attention economies. This moment will test whether the family's narrative control survives unsanctioned jabs and whether audiences reward restraint over spectacle. Choose your clicks wisely. Attention invests in the stories we buy, and that buying behavior shapes future choices. Right now, today, not tomorrow. There's another angle worth watching: how influencers and minor celebrities will try to monetize the friction. Expect a pickup in commentary videos, reaction reels, and Patreon deep dives that repurpose emotional labor into subscription revenue. That secondary market of punditry profits from slow-drip controversy, and its incentives are aligned with prolonging outrage rather than resolving it. Also watch for the quiet editorial decisions inside streaming platforms. Will episode edits be tightened to avoid litigation? Or will producers leave in more dramatic beats because they reliably drive engagement? The choice reveals corporate appetite for risk and how much a platform values short-term viewership spikes over long-term brand relationships with the family. Pay attention to micro-performances too. Body language on red carpets, who gets seated next to whom at family events, and which photos are released. Those tiny signals are the industry's smoke signals. They're how managers communicate without press releases. Reading those cues gives the audience more accurate information about family dynamics than wild rumor threads do. Consider the reputational accounting. Every public jab, denial, or curated apology is a line item in a long-term ledger of trust. The family can weather flashes of controversy, but credibility erodes with repeated cycles of spectacle. If Kourtney's shade becomes another episodic beat in a familiar rhythm, viewers will grow savvier and the brand's emotional currency will depreciate. And that's a risk even Chris can't spin forever. Don't overlook the competitor playbook. Rival reality families and pop culture hosts will seize this moment to draw viewers away, pitching their own takes as the real inside story. That cross-pollination of audiences is a hidden pressure point. If the Kardashian narrative weakens, others will try to harvest attention, and advertisers will notice where engagement migrates. Expect fast-moving affiliate commerce moves too. A viral moment will inspire instant merch drops, themed playlists, and sponsored content that leans into the drama. The monetization is never far behind the controversy. Wherever attention spikes, commerce will follow, and that dynamic often normalizes, turning relational turmoil into product opportunities. Also watch legacy press for a subtler impact. Long-form profiles and magazine covers will reframe the episode in cultural terms, turning a social media dust-up into a narrative about marriage, fame, and the architecture of celebrity families. Those pieces tend to age better than hot takes, and they shape how future historians will read this moment. Finally, imagine this as a reputational stress test. If the family responds with transparency and restraint, they can emerge with credibility intact. If they weaponize the moment for profit without regard for privacy, audience trust will fray. Either outcome sends a signal to the market and to the siblings themselves about whether spectacle still pays or whether restraint is the smarter long game. All right, your turn. Was Kourtney justified in shading Kim? Was Kim's denial convincing? And do you think the family will package this into content or quietly shut it down? Hit like if you appreciate sharp cultural readings, subscribe for more no-nonsense entertainment analysis, and drop your wildest takes in the comments so we can roast, repair, and maybe even demand a better media ethic together. See you in the next video.